Hello, my fellow Americans. I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics. And here's the number one guy, Mr. Ray Hanania.
I think you're the number one guy, Bill Lipinski. It's always an honor to be on doing this podcast with you. You've had so much experience in politics. I am Ray Hanania, and this is Two Guys on Politics. And this is, let's see, season 3, episode 18. We're a little late, obviously, because of travels and all kinds of, we're still working. I'm still a working senior. There's no retirement for a lot of seniors. I don't want to retire. So I'm still working. But this is season 3, episode 18. It's June 29th, 2024. Anything interesting happened this past week that might impact politics?
Well,
Anything?
I thought the debate
Oh,
between
yeah.
Trump and Biden, I thought it was scintillating. I thought Joe
It
Biden
was,
handled the situation absolutely magnificently.
oh, yeah.
You know, you
This,
know what, you know what happened to that poor guy?
yeah, it
He
was
got
terrible.
he got drugged.
He,
Uh,
they, they slipped him a Mickey, you
Yeah,
said?
they slipped him a Mickey. That's the only thing I could possibly
Uh,
count for his horrendous performance. Now, let me tell you something here very seriously. I
good.
don't, I don't know if you ever heard about this guy or not, but his name is Tom Harkin. He's a very progressive, democratic talk show host.
Hmm.
He's on 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday. He lives in Portland, Oregon.
Doesn't he have something to do with his life besides yap on?
He, he is he is a dyed in the wool progressive, perhaps socialist Democrat. Okay.
Okay.
He started his show the day after the debate and said, Joe Biden must go. We
Yeah.
need to find a new candidate.
Yep.
Uh, the Democrats cannot possibly go into the 2024 election with him at the head of the ticket. It will be total and complete disaster. And for one time, I agree with
That's the
Tom.
first time.
First time I've ever agreed with him. Yes.
Yeah. I listen. I was at the debate, and let me just explain it to people because people think this is similar to past presidential debates. They don't pay attention to all the media lies, that they do about stuff. But CNN, there is a U.S. Commission on Presidential Debates. And since the 1980s, they have hosted the debates after the conventions. Once we know who is on the ballot, nobody is on the ballot right now. Nobody. So CNN and ABC media decided, hey, let's help Joe Biden. This is my opinion. Let's help Joe Biden. Let's organize our own debates outside of the Commission on Presidential Debates. And we can help Joe because we can impose restrictions that the commission wouldn't. They implemented a system where you automatically, the microphone will be turned off. So if you were a candidate, you couldn't speak. And that's because in the last time they met, I think it was 4 years ago, Trump interrupted Biden 190 times. That's what was reported 190 times. And it was very, difficult to debate when someone's constantly interrupting you like that. So the media said, we're going to cut off his mic and Joe Biden's mic. So that'll help Joe Biden. And the second thing they did, which was the worst, in my opinion, they didn't like the fact that there was an audience 4 years ago that was cheering, and jeering. And Trump's people were much more aggressive than Biden's people at that time. So they eliminated the audience and they put Biden and Trump in a separate studio with Dana Bash and Jake Tapper, who really they did a poor job lobbing softballs. It just was a mess, I thought. So they were in a separate CNN studio, but 800 journalists, including myself, I went to Atlanta. We were a mile away in the Yellow Jacket Stadium in Atlanta, which the CNN
Georgia
called it.
Tech, right?
Yes, Georgia Tech University. And we couldn't, we were watching them on TV monitors controlled by CNN. They called it the spin room. And I sat there and when I watched the debate, I was in shock at how it looked like Joe Biden was in a deer in headlights. This was all intended to help Joe Biden, but what it really did, it backfired. It made Trump look tempered. They tempered his craziness. They made him look normal. And without being attacked by Trump, Biden has no excuse to explain his constant trip ups and his confusion. And he did okay in some parts, but he did terrible. At one point, I heard the media, you could hear the rumbling of 800 journalists going, yeah, you're right. When Donald Trump said, I can't understand a word he's saying. What is he saying? What is he talking about? And you could hear in the stadium, Yellow Jacket Stadium, McCamish Hall, and Georgia Tech University, a mile from where these guys are at, reporters going, oh my God, I can't understand him either. What's happening? It was just horrible. They were trying to help him, but they sabotaged him. And now Biden is in serious trouble because I just can't see him being our president. This is worse than Reagan, wasn't it? Remember in Reagan's second term?
Come
No,
on.
I mean when Reagan was in his second term, there were issues of memory and the loss of memory and stuff and Alzheimer's.
I never saw any of those.
Well, I mean, he was better off. He was still more capable, but that issue came up, when Reagan was president in his second term, but they addressed it, they took care of it, they worked it through. It was the end of his term. This is before he even gets a chance to start his second term. I don't know. What was your overall impression of Biden? I mean, if you had to look at the two, how bad was it?
I already gave you my overall impression of Biden. Let me go over a number of other things, though, that you had to say here.
Sure.
Try to correct the record if possible.
Sure.
First of all, I thought the greatest line of the night was when they asked Biden some question about Medicare and Social Security, and he was fumbling and bumbling along, and he finally ended up at the end, and Trump says, I really could not understand what he was saying there.
Right.
In fact, I don't think he understood what he was saying.
That's right. That was the second part. I didn't have the quote in front of me.
Yeah, I thought that was.
But the reporters in the auditorium, this basketball stadium, we all connected with that moment.
Well, we should. Absolutely.
Yeah,
now,
it was horrible.
As far as the format, I liked the format very much. Neither candidate could play to the crowd, so that took the crowd out of it.
Right.
I think they had an opportunity to be more objective about the way that they answered questions. I was happy with the fact that the moderators did not interject themselves that much.
Right.
I was very happy with the fact that the time limit was strictly imposed. Okay. Now, as you said, it was set up by CNN to help Joe Biden. It totally and completely backfired.
I agree.
Because it made Donald Trump look like the man next door.
Right.
Okay.
He came across normal.
Right. Instead of being that bombastic, lying individual. Now, there's a good one. I got to get this one. I've talked to a number of my Trumper friends since the debate. We all say that Trump did very, very well, and the fact that Biden was terrible. But the new line for my Trumper friends is all those lies that Trump manages to talk about. They're not lies. They are slight exaggerations. That's all.
Listen, I believe here's the problem with it's just on the issue of lying. They never say Biden lies. It's always Trump they say that lies. He's a liar. He's a crook. Every time he says something, there's a fact check. They do a fact check. They don't do that with anybody else. To me, the issue, and this is the media, it's a media hypocrisy. I wish they'd do that to everybody. I wish they'd do that to Biden and look at some of the stuff he said, but they won't do it to him. So when they talk about Trump lying, it bothers me. And I don't look at the accusation of did he lie? I look at just the way a lot of people, I think voters look at and are going to look at it. They look at the media saying, oh, this is more media hypocrisy and more media bias. CNN institutionalized their bias with this debate. And I don't think Biden and the Democrats can recover from it unless they figure out a way to have Joe Biden step down in a smart, he's at the height of his career. Do you really want to see him go down the tubes over the next 4 years as president? What that's going to be like? He can salvage himself. And I have to say one thing: when we're at the debates, when the debate was over, they had all the Republican supporters in one room at the stadium and all the Democratic supporters in another room. The Republicans were very organized. They had a sign with the name of the Republican person, Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman, I think. She came down. The guy held up the sign. The reporters crowded around her. She made a statement. She answered questions. Marco Rubio was there. Vivek Swamy was there. They had everybody there. When the Democrats came down, and right away they said, we're not taking any questions. They looked shell shocked, and they stood together around Warnock and a couple other people, and they said, listen, we still believe that Trump is a liar and that, he's not telling the truth, but they never, and that we tried to ask, what about Biden's performance? Are you still, they wouldn't let us ask the question. They stayed there for about 10, 15 minutes, and then they left. And to me, that was very indicative of the problem that they see and they don't know how to handle.
Okay, now, Ray, let's be very serious for the rest of this program, if at all possible, because we are talking about the United States of America.
Yes.
And how and by whom we're going to be governed for the next 4 years. We agree that Joe Biden is not up to the job.
Right.
He proved it conclusively
right.
during the debate. Most Democrats, if not all Democrats, agree. But where do the Democrats go from here? Can they talk Joe Biden into gracefully stepping down? Let us assume that they managed to do that. Okay, Joe announces, he just isn't feeling up to the job, and he doesn't want to see the Democratic Party go down in defeat because of him, or however he wants to phrase it. Give him the most graceful way to get out of the situation. Okay, Joe Biden is no longer the candidate. What do the Democrats do now?
Well, they do what Nixon did when he left the Vietnam War, and he orchestrated this image of leaving Vietnam with peace and honor, and he promoted that. But he had Kissinger, who was out there advocating, even though Nixon had problems. I don't know who would be the person that would stand up for Biden. It certainly is not Kamala Harris.
Okay,
and that's the other frightening thing, that really it isn't just Biden's performance that scares me. It's that Biden's performance suggests he may not, and God forbid, I do not wish anything bad on him, physically or personally. But what if he doesn't survive and we get stuck with her? That's going to be even worse than a incoherent Biden. That to me is like very troubling for this country. I don't see anybody standing up with him to help nurture him through this. He is in a very bad sinkhole, and I'm not sure he can get out of it, but they need to do something quickly.
Well, Ray, considering that the African American woman is by far the most loyal Democratic voter in this republic of ours, how do they not move up Kamala to be their presidential candidate?
I don't know how they picked her to be the vice presidential candidate. And again, I'm not knocking African American women. They could have selected Michelle Obama as vice president, and I would have said, I may not agree with everything she says, but she is one smart person. And she knows, she has a charisma that could do stuff. I'm thinking that, if they can get Biden to gracefully step down before the convention or at the convention for whatever excuse they want to come up with to save his dignity and reputation, Michelle Obama would be a powerful replacement who could save the Democratic Party at least through this election. That's my opinion. Now, do I like everything she's done? No, there are a few things I don't like, but I did meet her years ago before Barack Obama's trajectory got set off by Jack Ryan's fumbles. He's the one that put Obama in office in that
Yes,
Senate
he
race
is.
and then president. But I don't know who else can do it. Who else in the Democratic Party can help bring the party together after this stumble?
Well, you realize that Michelle Obama has said some very bad things about the
Yes,
United States of America.
yes, she has.
I know when her husband was elected president, she said it was the first time in her lifetime that she was proud of her country. And after they were out of office, she has been rather negative towards a lot of white people and
Right.
the attitude a lot of white people have. So, I think that she probably would be a difficult person to
Uh,
elect it. By the same token, I don't think that they either have to go with Kamala Harris or they have
Yikes.
to go with Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Michelle talks about not wanting to run. Uh, I knew her when he was running for the US Senate. She came to my ward organization a couple of times, spoke in his behalf. She came to a fundraiser. She's obviously a very intelligent woman.
Yes.
She seems sincere in what she says. She has no interest in being involved in politics personally. I know from a number of different sources that when he ran for Congress and lost to Bobby Rush, she was very upset. And
Right.
she threatened to divorce Brock
Right.
at the time if he ever got in politics again.
Right.
Now, obviously, she overcame that because he went on to be the
The
U.S.
U.S.
Senator,
Senator.
United States President. Okay. But so we get, if Joe steps down, we get her to run for president. She's the presidential candidate. Now, does that satisfy the African Americans? After all, they would have two candidates on the ticket for the first time in history. Do you think American people are ready for two African American women as candidates for president and vice president?
Listen, we elected Joe Biden without any concern for Kamala Harris. I voted for him the second time, this past election, but I was very deeply distressed by Harris. She just she seemed like incoherent from the beginning. But here's the issue that I think is really important. In today's world, with the migrant situation and illegal immigrants coming into the country and all this money being spent on these illegal immigrants and illegal aliens and migrants and whatever you want to call them, I don't care what it is, not enough money is being spent in communities that need it, like the black community. And I think Donald Trump, now I know that he has some sympathy, growing sympathy among black voters who don't like to see what Biden has done with that situation, which is why I think Biden tried to say he was going to crack down on illegal immigration. Not that he's done a great job, but I think he saw that as a problem. But if Trump can get his act together, I'm not sure he can. He can't control his pettiness or his emotions, but if he could, and if he were managed properly, I think he could get a lot of African American votes to support him. And especially if he ran a candidate. I think that Tim Scott, he's African American, he's a
Yes, he is.
Republican.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
he were the vice president, I think that could turn things around. But I still believe Michelle Obama is living off of a reputation that hasn't been challenged. Not many
Correct.
people talk about her mistakes and her rhetoric because I wrote one column. I liked her, but I wrote a column 2 years ago criticizing her for what I thought was racist remarks that she made, constantly criticizing quote unquote white folk. You white folk, you white folk do this, you white folk do that. And I'm thinking, that's racist. How can you complain about racism when you use that type of rhetoric? I don't know what the Democrats do, and I'm not convinced that Donald Trump can hold it together this tame image that he was given, because the media is going after him like crazy. You're a liar. That's their latest thing. Yeah, Biden may not know what's going on in the world, but Trump is a liar. That's a bigger threat than having an incoherent president in the White House. I don't think that's going to sell with common sense voters.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, if they stick with Joe Biden and through some triple miracle, he is reelected president, many Democrats are saying, well, the administration around him, the people around him will just ignore the wild things he has to say because of the dementia that he's apparently suffering from.
Right, right.
And they will run the country.
Well, aren't they running the country now?
Well, they
aren't the Clintons really behind the Biden facade?
I thought it was the Obamas.
Or the Obamas. I see their faces, of these former swamp, the deep state people that are behind the politicians. I know that's a Trump term, but before Trump came into office, we used to talk about that before. The people, in the Beltway that were really keeping the government and the White House operating, those are career people from Democrats swapped out by Republicans. But I've always assumed that's who's been trying to run them. And I think they've done a poor job, by the way.
At the deep state?
The deep state, the Beltway, whatever you want, the swamp, whatever you want to call it. The fact is that I don't think it's Biden running the administration. He's not running things.
I'm trying to think who wanted to drain the swamp. Who was the first?
Well, I don't know who the first one was. I know Trump did, but what was that one guy? I have his book. I have to think of it. Contentious speaker, Republican Speaker of the House back in the 90s.
Oh, Newt Gingrich.
Yes.
Oh, Newt's the guy that started all of this.
Yes.
But let's get back. I want to make this point.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we got Michelle, maybe we got Joe for president on the Democratic side. If your buddy Trumper can just keep it together and seem like the man next door, he can walk in as president of the United States.
As a convicted felon.
And we have not even got to issues.
Yeah.
Number one issue in this country, as far as I'm concerned, is the open border.
Yes.
Americans are extremely upset with the open border. And then they see the legislation and the executive order that Biden tried to put forward as nothing but eyewash. After 3.5 years of having an open border, now he has an executive order. All of a sudden now he's supporting some legislation. So they don't see him being sincere. They see him and the Democrats wanting to continue an open border.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, I think the economy is doing very well, quite frankly, for you, for me, for a lot of people, but not for the middle class, which is continuing to suffer, and the lower economic working class people. Two areas where inflation is really terrible is, number one, you go to the grocery store.
Absolutely.
And you know how much it costs you now, more than it did.
It's rampant.
6 months ago, a year ago. It's absolutely incredible. You go to buy gasoline, terrible. Price is probably double, probably triple. So there's three issues that are very, very strongly in favor of the Republicans and Trump. So you have a candidate like Joe Biden, or someone that you're going to replace him with, who will probably split the Democratic Party to a certain extent. Plus you have these issues. You tell me how, if your man, Trumper, can keep his image as the man next door like he had the other night, how do you beat him? You can't beat him.
Right. I agree with you. I was going to say, I agree with you. Now, here's my scenario for the future. Here's a long-term scenario. We reelect Biden, and he destroys the Democratic Party. A strong Republican comes into office, continuing the polarization in America for another 8 years. 4 years and another 8 years. We'll never get out of this. We'll be in a big mess. Second scenario, Biden loses to Trump. He runs and he loses to Trump, which I think under this current circumstance, he is going to lose to Trump. And Trump is going to destroy the party. But as a Republican in his second term, it might shake up the Democratic Party to find a new leader during those 4 years to represent Democrats and centrists to step forward and run 4 years from now. That's my long-term strategy. In a way, I think Trump is the only thing that's going to save the Democratic Party. The third scenario is we find somebody good now to break this polarization. I don't know if it's Michelle Obama. I don't think it's Robert F. Kennedy. I think he's an okay candidate, but he's wacky. He has some wacky views, and he keeps going back and forth. He's lost my support. At first, I thought, wow, a Kennedy, this could be great. He's completely burned that bridge. So those are the three scenarios, and the only one that looks good is if Trump wins and tears the country to pieces, and then we come back 4 years from now with a strong Democrat who finally steps up and does what Biden promised to do 4 years ago, but never did. I'm going to bring the country together. He just never did bring the country together, and he never really tried.
Well, see, you are the one that introduced me to Robert Kennedy Jr. many months ago, and you came forward as a supporter of his.
I thought he was going to be good.
And then he did a number of things that you didn't particularly appreciate, which we will not go into because
right. Yeah.
Well, I have come to the conclusion that the man I'm voting for, if he gets on the ballot in Illinois, is Robert Kennedy Jr. Why? He is a little wacky. There is no question about that. Okay, that's number one. But I think he's honest. I think he's an honest individual.
Yes.
That doesn't mean he's always right. That's for sure. You can be totally honest and be totally wrong about an issue. But I think he's honest. He certainly is intelligent. He certainly is circumspect. He takes an awful long time to explain his positions, which makes him a horrendous candidate, really.
Right.
But people are so desperate because neither one of the parties represent the people. I think a lot of individuals are willing to take a flyer on Kennedy. And I have to tell you, in all honesty, I'm willing to take a flyer on him. Now, I'd love to see Joe Manchin getting into this race. Okay?
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen, though. And I would just like to make one other comment on this whole thing. What happened to our great friend, that was going to be the third party that collected all this money, that romanced so many of these candidates? Okay? You know who I'm talking about?
The No Labels Party?
Absolutely. No labels. They were going to save us from exactly where we're at.
And they collapsed.
They're still collecting money, but they're probably getting ready for 4 years from now. Maybe they'll candidate there.
Do they have a candidate at all at this point?
No, they said they're not running a candidate because they couldn't find one.
And then Joe Lieberman, of course, was part of that. And of course,
that's the way.
Yeah, he passed. And because he was somebody that I think was smart, and I could, I didn't have to. In politics, there's no such thing as agreeing 100%.
Absolutely.
If you can agree 70%, that's a passing grade. I would get a C in school if I got a 70. So to me, I've learned that 70% or better is great. That's all. Now, here's a problem I have with your three candidate scenario with Kennedy, Biden, and Trump. I think if those were the three candidates, I probably would vote for Robert Kennedy, because the one thing I do know about politics is politicians will say and do anything to get into office. And while I have concerns about his Middle East policies, I think he's just saying that now to keep that group from torpedoing them, because, AIPAC ran 244 candidates for office with hundreds of millions of dollars and won every one of those offices. They took out that Jamal Bowman, a black African-American, and replaced him with a white guy. And they're going to get away with it, a white Democrat. And the Democratic Party is a shell shock. So, yes, if Kennedy were on the ballot, I would vote for him. Absolutely. in the hopes that obviously you get into office, you step back, you know, whatever your political views were, you do what's best for the country. And I think he might be smart enough to do that. But can he make it? The Democrats are spending a lot of money to stop him.
Remember one thing too, if he became president, he does not have a party, okay?
Right.
No matter who controls the House, no matter who controls the Senate, they're not going to be his people.
Right.
He would have to sit down and negotiate with the House and the Senate on almost every issue, which should bring us together, should bring the country together. That's another, attribute that I think that he has.
Well, it's going to come, though, from the Democrats and the Republicans. Are they really willing to come together? You know, the leadership of the Republican Party sure didn't sound like it, and neither did the leadership of the Democratic Party. So I'm worried that Kennedy would be a Dennis Kucinich at a national level. Remember when Dennis Kucinich won that? Was it in Minnesota? Was it Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio? I think
Mayor of Cleveland.
Cleveland, and it went into turmoil because he couldn't run the city, and the powers that be were blocking him at every step. That was just at a city level. Imagine that scenario at a national level.
Remember him, Moody Light. You remember Moody Light?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it brings back, now we can look back and smile, but back then it was like, oh my God, this is just horrible.
Dennis ran for Congress. Dennis and I, as hard as it might believe, became good friends when he was in Congress. I liked Dennis.
Yes.
Dennis was the most naive politician I've ever known in my lifetime. Okay, beyond the shadow of a doubt. He thought everybody in politics was as honest and as upstanding as he was. Now, that doesn't mean that I agreed with Dennis.
Right.
Most of the issues I totally disagreed with him on. But he thought that anyone who had a difference of opinion had it not because of money, not because of politics, but because they really believed that.
Right.
That was Dennis's downfall. He thought people were as honest as he was. Well, unfortunately, that was not the case, but I like Dennis very much.
Yeah, I like Dennis Kucinich too, and I met him and his wife, and they seemed like good people several times, and I thought, okay, this guy is pretty decent, but isn't that the problem with Kennedy? I mean, Kennedy, I think, you say things to get into office in campaigns and elections, and then you moderate it because you got to compromise. American politics is supposed to be about compromise. So I come in with my hard line, I meet with someone with a hard line, and then we find a middle ground. That's what we're supposed to do. Maybe Kennedy can do that. Trump certainly cannot do it. Biden, I don't think is capable, has the capacity to even try. He didn't show it during the 4 years. So yeah, maybe Kennedy is the guy that could save us. Maybe. But that depends. How does that, I mean, what if you had a president and with no party, as you pointed out, and the Democrats decide to say, we're just going to come together and run the country, or the Republicans come together and say, we're just going to run the country?
But the president has so much power in this day and age, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah. Well, Kennedy's still an outsider, though, even though he comes from a political family. He doesn't have the experience to run, to know all the insider things, it makes me think back to council wars at Chicago City Hall when Harold Washington came in. Edward Doliak knew the process inside out, blindfolded. He could run it in his sleep, and Harold Washington, he stumbled Harold Washington for 4 years. It took a while to beat him. It concerns me that I don't know if Kennedy has that knowledge of how things work to overcome that.
I think if Kennedy became president, all those people in his family would suddenly come home and see the light and circle around him and be willing to help him out in every way possible. They would want to restore Camelot.
Yeah, I wonder if all the Kennedys who were from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s family who endorsed Joe Biden are sitting there wondering, what the heck did they do? All right, Bill, listen, any final thoughts on this whole thing that you want to share? So before we wrap it up?
Yes, I want to ask everyone to please pray for America and have a wonderful 4th of July.
Yes, me too. I hope everybody, the 4th of July should remind us what this whole issue is about. It's about this country. We really need to find a way to come together. And I think that was a great comment, Bill. All right. I'm Ray Hanania,
I'm Bill Lipinski.
and we will be back for another Two Guys on Politics next week. Remember, go to twoguysonpolitics.com to check out all of our podcasts. Bill, thanks so much. It was great speaking to you. You have a happy 4th of July also.
Same to you, Ray.
All right. Bye-bye.